All right. So I'm Darren Johnson. I'm the ID program manager with Holstein Association USA, based in Brattleboro, Vermont. Um, in addition to my roles as ID program manager, I'm also part of the team that's working on the Holstein project.
Thanks, Darren, and thanks for joining us today. Little background on the Holstein program. It's a relevant program for our beef improvement project here in Vermont. It started back in April 2019. The American Simmental Association and the Holstein Association USA announced the formation of the Holstein branded beef program. It identifies elite Sim Angus bulls with specific production attributes as mating solutions for dairy producers who breed some of their herd back to beef. The program's objective is, as is stated, is to provide additional revenue to dairy producers through the production of value-added terminal calves, to offer new marketing avenues for progressive beef seed stock operations, and to offer a consistent supply of high-quality calves better situated to capture market premiums, and to deliver mating solutions for dairy farmers who breed some of their herd to beef. You've partnered with IGS, International Genetic Solutions, for the data that was collected on the progeny for these sires that, as I understand it, the sire list that's produced by Holstein USA and Holcim program is updated every 4 months to reflect those changes in data performance for the progeny, both in the feedlot and on the rail. And IGS is the largest data pool available for feeder cattle evaluation, as we understand it at this point. So quite a program that you've rolled out, quite a partnership you developed with the Simmental Association. And for that reason, we wanted to spend a little time just exploring more about this program, its relevance, its applicability to the dairy farmers in Vermont who are interested in breeding more of their cows back to beef. So with that, we've got some questions we wanted to ask, and we'll tee those up here one by one and let you share more about the program, Darren. Thanks for joining us. So step by step, how does a dairy farmer enter this program?
All right. So I would say at this point, it's really a pretty simple process to get involved in the Holstein program. Primarily today, the biggest thing and the first step that a dairy producer would need to make is just on sire selection. Visit, our website and identify or select from the list of bulls that we've identified as Holstein qualified, and use those bulls in your breeding program and stuff to produce these dairy beef cross calves. That's the first step, and right now that's kind of the biggest thing that people just need to do is just select the bulls from our list.
And on your website, you have companies that will carry those genetics as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So when we run the Holstein list, it includes essentially all bulls that qualify based on the criteria that's set up. There's a number of bulls that aren't known to have semen available that are pretty much just kind of running the countryside, breeding cows, natural service. So we include kind of an all bulls list that would be anybody that qualifies, and then also narrow that down to help our dairy producers find and select from the list of bulls that are known to have semen available. Excellent. So with that, we include kind of where they can access those bulls, which AI company is carrying them, as well as a link to their sire page and stuff, so they can access additional information on the bull if they choose.
Excellent. And those bulls are selected based on the Holstein index. Can you describe what traits go into this Holstein index, and how is this different than other industry efforts?
Sure. So the Holstein index, what it focuses on are some economically relevant traits to the unique situation that we're dealing with, creating terminal calves from a Holstein dam. So primarily those traits would include calving ease. So there's a heavy emphasis on calving ease to get a live calf, get a cow through calving without issue. Also a heavy emphasis on grading ability and muscle shape. So bulls that qualify for the list are typically well above average for ribeye area and marbling. And then also to address the issues that are often associated with Holstein carcasses, and as we're seeing even in some Holstein beef cross carcasses, the carcass length issue. To deal with that, what there's been is kind of a more intermediate or a moderate weighting in growth. So bulls that are going to be a little bit more moderate, not the extreme weaning weight and yearling weight growth, but more moderate growth to try to address the carcass length issue that can often be associated with Holsteins.
Okay.
As far as how it may differ, I would say probably the traditional approach and stuff to the beef on dairy model has been just a black bull, and kind of an inexpensive black bull at that. So what essentially we're doing is just trying to put more emphasis on the genetic merit to make a better calf, and kind of go above and beyond just the black and inexpensive. I think today we're starting to see some other programs that are realizing that there is a need to put some genetic emphasis on selection, just to make a more consistent and more predictable product. But that was kind of the initial driving force behind the Holstein program, was to focus on calving ease, carcass, and then address the carcass length issue, and do more than just be selecting bulls that are simply black and inexpensive for this process.
Okay, thank you. And why is Holstein USA uniquely positioned to lead this effort?
I think there's a couple things that are kind of unique from our perspective. One, we're the largest dairy breed association and have members all across the country that we work with on a pretty regular basis, and directly involved with their genetic programs. So we've got access to a lot of dairies all across the country. The other thing that I think makes us a little bit unique compared to other companies is we're not necessarily in the business of marketing beef semen. So we can offer an unbiased opinion as to which bulls are the most complementary, or which bulls make the most sense, and not be limited to bulls that we may have access within our individual company. So I think the unbiased nature opinion that we can offer is also quite unique.
Yeah, and that's true of IGS as well, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So good. Can you talk more about how Holstein USA's experience in official identification and tracing differentiates the program?
Sure. So Holstein has a pretty long-standing history and background and stuff in animal ID. A number of years ago, Holstein was involved in a USDA pilot project that was set up to track animals from birth to slaughter. So we have some experience in that. That program, called National Fair, was actually kind of the foundation for the Tag ID program that we use on our registrations and in dairy today. And that program has grown to where more than 3/4 of the animals that we register are registered today with Tag ID, including an official 840 tag and a corresponding tag. So double tags, official ID, 840, official 840 numbers. That's kind of the foundation of what we're doing today. And we've kind of used that knowledge and that experience to develop and have a tag in place that we can use for the Holstein program as well. That would include an official 840 RFID tag and a corresponding visual maxi tag that would include the logo of the program.
And so if a dairy producer finds select semen from your list, they can purchase these tags from Holstein USA?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. We would have them available for anybody that wants to tag those calves and stuff with a Wholesome tag.
Okay. Good. If this program, oh, I'm sorry, does this program then fit small or large dairy producers better, in your opinion?
I don't think it's necessarily limited to one or the other. It's, I think the foundation of it is just essentially selecting the right bulls. So whether it's a small herd that's decided to incorporate some beef into their breeding program or a large herd, selecting the right bulls really doesn't matter as far in terms of herd size. So I think it could work equally as well in large or small herds.
Now, if this program develops, we're only 2 years into it, where do you envision being able to purchase Wholesome beef as a consumer? Is it something that'll brand all the way through?
Yeah, so I think at this point it would be a little bit difficult to specify where exactly a consumer would be able to purchase beef. But I think given kind of some of the unique kind of situations that surround the dairy industry compared to the beef industry, I think it really gives us some opportunities. In particular, on the beef side, you've typically got a calving season that's 2 times a year. You've got a spring calving season and you've got a fall calving season. So you end up with a lot of peaks and valleys in terms of supply. I think on the dairy side, with a beef on dairy program, a Wholesome program, I think one of the unique opportunities that we or dairy producers would have is the ability to actually produce a very consistent product that's available year round, just due to the nature of the dairy calving, where cows calve year round. We can produce calves, every month of the year, sort of a thing. So I think that unique ability really does position the dairy industry in a pretty unique position compared to the beef side to produce a product that could be available year round.
Okay. As we think about dairy farmers getting set up to harness this program for their own operation, how does one maximize the price received for cattle in these programs? Are they developing their own individual markets? Do markets for these value-added calves or finished beef exist? How is that maximized?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different scenarios or opportunities that people would have to maximize the profit, and it's going to depend upon that producer situation. If they're selling calves as, say, like week olds or day olds, week olds, kind of selling them early off the farm, or if they're in a position where they can actually keep these animals and feed them out themselves. If I personally, I think if it's a dairy that's in a situation where they're having to sell calves, weekly or something like that as young calves, I think that the opportunity that they would have to maximize the profit is just through actually market what they've got, market the genetics. Don't just sell them as a black calf, sell them as a Wholesome sired calf that, kind of let the buyers know, or potential buyers know, that, hey, there's been some emphasis placed on genetics, and these calves, are bred to produce a superior product down the road. So, market the genetics, market the vaccination program, market whatever you've done with that calf to set it up for success in the future for that buyer. If it's a situation where the dairy is in a position where they can actually feed these cattle out, take advantage of, what we're expecting to be the abilities of these calves to hit the market premiums and avoid the dairy deductions. So I think if you're able to feed those cattle out, sell them on the grid, and take advantage of those premiums that exist in the market today. So I think that would be those would be kind of some of the opportunities that you'd have to maximize the value of these calves. Market them as something special if you're selling them as young calves, and and feed them out and kind of take advantages of the premiums that exist in the market today, if you're in a position to be able to do that.
And so the farms that do hold these calves a little longer, what are the important guidelines for calf raising for this program?
Yeah. So I think obviously, whether you're raising terminal dairy beef cross calves or you're raising dairy replacements, colostrum is going to be key. Get colostrum in these calves and stuff, and set them up for success. Give them every opportunity that they have to express that genetic potential that you've bred into them. So obviously colostrum is going to be key. Vaccination programs and stuff, are also a crucial part of it. I would say a lot of whatever your protocols are for your dairy replacements to set them up for success, I think a lot of those same protocols and practices kind of apply to these calves. Don't think of them as something less, and treat them as something less. Give them every opportunity to express their genetic potential and add a profit to your dairy. So I think, incorporating a lot of those same practices and protocols that you do on your dairy replacements is going to be crucial and stuff for these calves as well.
And if they carry them all the way out to finish, they're interested in some of these premiums. You mentioned selling on the grid. Does this program generate profits for commodity beef? Is there evidence? Is there progeny data out there where they can market high-end beef, choice and above, high choice and prime?
Yeah. If these cattle are fed out, and they're certainly bred to have the ability to access those premiums and to be eligible for all of those premiums that exist. I mean, it's a lot of it is going to come down to nutrition management. We're doing what we can to get the right genetics in place. Then it's just going to be kind of management and allowing them to express that. So yes, our expectation is that these calves, due to greater emphasis on genetics, will be eligible for, certainly should be eligible for many of the premiums that exist in the marketplace today, and should be able to avoid a lot of the deductions that would be associated with dairy carcasses.
And that includes finishing times as well?
Yep.
As far as being on par with industry standards, 16 to 18 months, somewhere in that range, they're reaching that potential. Okay, good.
Yep.
Could you tell us a little bit about more about the management per se? Are there protocols or nutrient protocols that you have available for a dairyman entering this program that they could essentially follow, or is that left to their individual nutritionalist consultant on their farm? How would you advise there?
Yeah, I think it's probably best to to kind of work with with your nutritionist. What I would caution people is on this is to feed these cattle like beef cattle. They shouldn't be fed or raised like replacement heifers or dry cows and stuff, to be able to finish in a timely fashion and be able to express that genetic potential that we're working to get bred into them. I do think that they will require a little bit of a different kind of a ration, and just feeding them like replacement heifers or dry cows probably is gonna slow down and maybe limit some of the profits that these cattle could be able to garner.
So on the management side, they're going to run separate contemporary groups on their farm for this beef program if they are raising them, growing them, and finishing them. Would you envision any other large capital expenses? Maybe they need to build a separate facility or section off a facility for this. Any other capital expenses that are typically associated with entering this program?
Yeah, I think a lot of that would pretty much come down to, the individual dairy, depending, do they have space that exists already, for, to keep extra cattle around or feed extra cattle. Maybe they're in a situation where they've already been feeding, maybe they've been feeding their dairy steers and stuff in the past, and it's just a matter of transitioning over. Instead of feeding dairy steers, you're feeding, dairy beef cross steers. So in those cases, it shouldn't really require anything special. It's just kind of kind of a transition. I would say the only situations where there may be need for a capital expense would be if they just flat do not have the facilities to raise and develop anything more than their current replacement heifers. If they just are limited in terms of space and facilities, then obviously to be able to feed out more cattle may require something additional.
And as far as, in tandem with that is oftentimes, the labor requirement for somebody to be actively involved in this at a scale that's going to be profitable. Would you envision new personnel required for being a beef herd specialist, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say it probably kind of goes back to kind of the previous, facility,
Yeah.
kind of related to facilities. Do you have the workforce in place already, or have you been feeding some cattle? It may just be, if it's just a matter of transitioning from one type to another, I wouldn't expect anything additional needed. I would say where you may need additional help is if all of a sudden you're going to be feeding, a couple hundred more cattle a year, then, depending upon what kind of workforce you already have in place, you may need to add additional help to deal with the extra mouths you're feeding and the extra cattle you have on feed at any given time. But like I said, it probably is going to depend upon the operation itself, if they're actually adding more cattle on feed or if it's just a matter of transitioning from one type to another.
And this is, you're primarily a dairy breed association. And so I want to kind of circle back to the dairy impact. If folks are actively breeding open cows to Holstein or any beef program, and they are being quite selective even on which cows get bred back for replacements versus which could be eligible for beef, how does that impact the bottom line for a dairyman if they're managing their gestations that way? Help us understand the impact to the bottom line for the dairy.
Yep. So it's, I guess from what I've experienced and what I'm seeing and hearing is typically, the incorporation of beef semen into a breeding program kind of goes hand in hand with a couple of other management changes. But, in some cases it's the incorporation of genomic testing to identify the elite females that they want to make all of their replacement females out of. And then also the use of sex semen. So using sex semen as well to target the females that they want to make their replacements from. So it gives them the opportunity to make all the replacements from kind of their upper tier or their upper end females genetically. And it also gives them an opportunity to manage the number of replacement heifers that they do have at any time. If a dairy is in a situation where they're not looking to expand and only want to produce enough replacement heifers to maintain their cow numbers, they can use sex semen and they could use beef semen, hopefully wholesome semen, to really be pretty precise and only raise those females that they need. I guess this can help the bottom line by, in terms of not having extra replacements to feed. Feeding a replacement heifer for 2 years to get her into production is pretty costly to a dairy. And if they can reduce the number of females that they're raising and ultimately not needing for that dairy, that can have a huge impact and stuff on the economic bottom line of that dairy. The other thing that's kind of worked with this as well was, the cost of replacements and what the value of that springing heifer is, if they were looking to sell them. Oftentimes that wasn't lining up very well and looking very good on the bottom line of the dairy and stuff. Oftentimes they were spending more to raise that heifer to production age than what they could get if they were selling extra replacement springers off of the farm. So this just gives them an opportunity to really manage those replacement numbers, not invest any additional money in replacement heifers that they don't need to sustain their operation.
Excellent. Is there anything else you want to share about the Holstein program that you'd like dairymen or other stakeholders in the industry to be aware of? I have one other follow-up too. I can share that with you while you're thinking. By default, is the Holstein semen that's available sexed semen, or is it going to be straight run?
At this point, the semen that's available on those bulls, I believe, is mostly just conventional.
Okay.
Like you said, we don't have any stake in any of the bulls that populate the list. Yeah. So it's really up to those individual AI companies that own or control those bulls as to what kind of semen is available. We haven't incorporated any kind of a sort based on whether semen is sexed or not in terms of the selection criteria for the list. So oftentimes most of these are still just conventional as to what's available on the market.
Okay, so further inquiry with the supplier needs to be made. Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Yep. I can't think of anything else that we haven't necessarily covered and stuff so far that I wanted to add or make sure we covered. So
yeah. Well, thank you, Darren, for your time. I don't have a whole lot of any further questions really. Jenny, is there anything else we need to capture here for the video or for the recording?
I had a question, and it might have nothing to do with what we'll use in the recording or anything, but I'm on a dairy farm. Do you have any insight into the options that the dairymen have for the day and week olds? You talked about marketing them with the genetics in mind. On that end of it, with these day or week olds, what programs exist or options do you know of that the dairymen have or have been utilizing for that?
Yeah. So I think from the farm visits I've made and from what I understand, just from having grown up on a farm and kind of working in different areas of the country and being on a lot of different farms, so many of those, the way they manage those those bull calves and stuff, traditionally it had been just the Holstein bull calf and kind of how those work. And now with the beef cross calves, it seems like it varies so much from area to area. Some of them are literally just going to the local sale barn with calves and stuff, to the locals, to this Wednesday sale. They just send bull calves to the Wednesday sale or whatever. Others, seem to be maybe a little bit more affiliated with a group or a grower that's taking those calves and placing them with specific calf ranches, having a little bit, there seems to be a little bit of that. There's others that maybe kind of with that, even have those buyers that I've heard, or even suggesting specific bulls that they, if you're doing beef, here's another list of bulls that we'd like you to use. So how exact, that's a really that seems to be, as we kind of got into this whole beef on dairy world, that was kind of the weird little area that we've really struggled with the most is those, typically it's the smaller herd that, that's just selling calves off the farm as day old, week old kind of calves. And they seem to almost just kind of disappear almost into a black hole is kind of what the challenge has been with those. As far as like the marketing, I guess my thought was with, being able to, trying to market them. I know some of the local markets at home, this is a little bit more feeder age calves. But I know when they have those kind of feeder sales, when those cattle come through, if you provide all that additional information, whether it's genetic information, whether it's vaccination history, whether it's weaning history, any of that extra stuff, they typically announce it at the sale. And it seems like, well, it certainly doesn't hurt. And also if you just, I guess kind of looking at, if you've ever watched like a feeder calf sale on Superior, and when they do those sales and you just kind of look across the bottom of the screen at, kind of those lots of cattle that seem like they tend to attract more attention. They've got logos and programs and everything all across the bottom of that page and stuff that, that they're VAC 45. So they're vaccinated, they're preconditioned. They've been weaned, for 45 days. They're source and age verified. They're, basically some kind of genetic program that, they're out of, sires from a specific herd. All of those kinds of things. I guess how much it actually affects the price, I don't know. I guess personally, I just think, hey, if you've put some of that effort in, at least let the buyer know that this is something more than just a black calf. So, like I said, that's kind of a weird and a very weak link in this whole chain and stuff, and trying to figure out how to deal with that segment, that basically that wet calf that's going off the farm and heading to a calf ranch someplace. How to deal with those has certainly been a challenge.
So if there is capacity for vertical integration on a farm to raise them all the way to finish and develop markets of their own for finished cattle, that erases some of that black hole effect and allows for a little more penetration for marketing efforts with buyers, I'm assuming.
Yep.
But you're right, proportionally, it's tricky finding homes for the number of calves that could be coming from this program from a state like Vermont with well over 125,000 milk cows annually in population.
Yep. And that's and that somewhat kind of ties into your question on kind of a capital investment. If that dairy's never been set up to raise anything more on that farm or that operation beyond just those replacement females, it may take, oh heck, we need twice as many calf hutches and stuff now to deal with with these calves. And okay, once they're weaned, then we need a place to keep these calves, all of these additional calves as well. So yeah, it certainly depends on the operation and what their appetite is for adding kind of another, hopefully, and I guess our expectation or hope is that another profit center to the dairy, but depending upon how they were set up originally, it may take a little bit to be able to accommodate those extra animals.
Darren, you mentioned in some regions or some areas, there are calf ranches who feasibly can receive these animals and put them into a production program at a very early age in a consistent way as calves on a calf ranch. We really don't have that in the Northeast. There's not to our knowledge, there's not a dedicated calf ranch in our state. curious if you could talk a little bit about the benefits of that linkage in those areas as you have perceived it in farm visits and just your market awareness, various of other regions. How important is the calf range?
Yeah, I think, I think it's probably a little bit more, certainly a little bit more common as you head west, with larger dairies and, kind of some more formal tie-ins, from dairies to, to a calf ranch. It seems in some cases that offers kind of an opportunity for the dairyman to in some cases retain ownership or, in these calves and be able to, to enjoy some of the premiums and the profits that, that they've been breeding into these cattle and not just kind of selling them as a commodity. So I think, there are some benefits associated with that. I have heard of some other opportunities, as you get into maybe more Midwest and maybe even East where, I've heard of, some small Amish producers and stuff that, that take, small numbers of calves and get them started and get them up at least to say like a feeder calf weight, 400 pounds or something like that, where they can, move them on to a feedlot someplace. But, I think there could potentially be opportunities for, whether it, like you said, whether you're in an area that has, kind of some small Amish producers or, even in an area like Vermont that maybe has some, some retired dairymen that have quit milking cows, but still have some facilities there that, if they still have kind of an interest in, in cattle and, and raising calves was kind of something that they really specialized in when they were in the dairy industry. It may be an opportunity for them to kind of get involved or stay involved, in a project like this and stuff to, to take those young calves and get them started.
All right. Yeah, good. Little background on that. We are seeing that as a whole here, and in our assessment, the readiness of producers hinges a lot on calf raising capacity at this point. So thanks for the feedback on that. Good. Well, anything else, Jenny, on your mind that you want to bring up in the interview?
No, that was great.
Okay. Thanks for your questions. And Darren, thanks again for carving out some time today. It's been a pleasure, always is. And we'll keep you posted on when the assessment recommendations get put together and send you copies and the, the files for the videos so you can access all those to you and the team. So,
okay.
All right. Thanks again. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
Yep. Have a good day.